This is Larry Anares, making your day with part 19 of a book I wrote on the destiny of the Filipino people. Subject, the Muslim problem. My dear friends, the latest accord between the Moral Islamic Liberation Movement and the Aquino government, which outlines a framework delineating the borders of a Bangsamoro area to be governed exclusively by Muslims, is welcome and commendable. But it is the result of a traditional practice of our government to deal directly with armed groups, first with the MNLF and now with MILF, instead of widely recognized long-standing socio-economic institutions that make claim to represent all functions of the Moros. The MNLF is composed merely of Maranaos, the MILF, the Tausugs, but there are other groups: Magindanaos, Sama, Yakan, Sanggil, Bajau, Kalibukan, Hama Mapun, Iranun, Kalagan, Palaway, Molbug. The sultans of Mindanao should unite under the Sultanate of Sulu as primus inter pares and be invited into mandatory participation of the peace process. The Sultanate under Al-Sultan Mo Hamalul Kiram III has been involved in diplomatic relations with the Emperor of Ancient China. They're the ones that leased Sabah to the British East Indies in 1878 and acquired U.S. protectorate status with the Kiram-Bates Treaty of 1899. With the other sultans of Mindanao, the Sulu Sultanate is entitled to a seat on the table of peace talks if the agreements are to be legal and permanent. But this framework agreement does not solve the real Muslim problem. Isolating the Muslim in an area of their own will only perpetuate the political and cultural divide between Christians and Muslims, will keep the Muslims perpetually under feudal lords that keep them in poverty and dependence, the same way the feudal lords of Luzon and the Visayas has kept the underclass under control at the end of the last century. Fortunately, the Philippine government under American rule bypassed the feudal lords and offered universal education to all Filipinos. But more important, the government sent scholars and pensionados to the United States for postgraduate courses that qualified them to enter the civil service without being beholden to the feudal lords. More about this after these messages. This is Larry Anares making your day with part 19 of a book I wrote on the destiny of the Filipino people. Subject, the Muslim problem. My dear friends, the perennial problem of Muslim dissidence and separatism in the southern Philippines has plagued the nation since the Spanish times. The American occupation up to the present time. While the Ilocanos, Tagalogs, Visayas, and other tribes freely fraternize and intermarry in all parts of the country, most of the Muslims suffer a cultural shock if they wander more than a few kilometers from their place of birth. Many Muslims still live in a feudal society where many of its leaders keep them in a state of ignorance and poverty and rule them with viciousness and violence, just like other Filipinos were similarly ruled up to the end of the Spanish occupation. Here is where the difference lies. Many Filipinos were liberated from feudal exploitation into an educated middle class to man our civil service by the policy of the Philippine government under American rule. to send scholars and pensionados to the best schools in the United States in the 1920s, and to give universal public education to all Filipinos, a policy that did not work among the Muslims because of internal internecine warfare. It is imperative, in order to achieve national unity, national peace, and national survival, to integrate the Muslim Filipinos into the nation, to pursue an affirmative action policy similar to that pursued by the United States by President John F. Kennedy and President Lyndon B. Johnson to jumpstart the civil rights movement towards the liberation of Afro-Americans, the blacks. On March 16, 1961, President John F. Kennedy issued Executive Order 10925, which included a provision that government contractors take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are employed and employees are treated during employment without regard to race, color, and creed, or national origin. The executive order was superseded by Executive Order 11246, issued on September 24, 1965 by President Lyndon B. Johnson, which prohibited employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, and national origin by those organizations receiving federal contracts and subcontracts, amended in 1967 to include discrimination against women. This was followed by the U.S. University's acceptance of the principles of affirmative action to give more educational opportunities to women and to the minorities, especially the blacks, the Latins, and the Indians. More tomorrow, my dear friends. This is Larry Henares, making your day, saying good day, God bless you. Thank you very much for being with us. Till next time, hasta la bye-bye.